All right, come on in, everybody. Welcome back to The Holler. TNHoller.com is where you can find us, at the TN Holler on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that good stuff. We also have Hollers hollering all across the state. Thanks to your support, we really do appreciate it. Your small dollar monthly donations go a long way. Make it $10 a month and get one of these sweet holler hats that I'm wearing. And then also just a few shout outs. Shout out to AJ Martin if you need some jewelry and you're in Nashville or anywhere really. Go to AJ, very supportive of us. If you're buying or selling a home in Middle Tennessee, Elisa Parker. And if you need an attorney, which our guest today may at some point, Abby Rubenfeld is a rock star. All right. Today we are going to be talking to and joined by Tracy O'Neill, who is in Cheatham County. And in Cheatham, they are fighting a fight against the TVA, or they are dealing with a situation. I don't know if I'll call it a fight, but dealing with a situation, maybe Tracy will, with the TVA, where the TVA is now building new gas plants in certain areas of Tennessee. And, you know, that I guess flies in the face of recommendations of a lot of environmental groups, and also hurts potentially the communities that these gas plants are popping up in. So we wanted to check in with Tracy, who is with Preserve Cheatham County, and they're dealing with this right now, and hear what's going on. Tracy, how are you today?
I'm fantastic, Justin. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to be with you today. This is absolutely a fight with the Tennessee Valley Authority. They are the nation's largest power producer in the entire nation, and they are on the cusp of the largest gas build out of any utility in the entire nation. So, yeah, it does fly in the face of environmental groups, but it's also an assault on private property owners. You know, when you move to an agricultural community, or if you have lived in an agricultural community your entire life, you don't expect industrial development. You might expect some residential development. That's just kind of the nature of the beast, right? You know, you have land, you pass it down to the kids. They might not want to farm it. So you might expect that farm to get sold, you know, for a bunch of houses, but you sure as heck don't expect a methane gas plant to pop up in your front yard.
So take me back, if you could, to like, when did you first hear that this was happening? How did people find out about it?
You know, a funny but not so funny story. So during the pandemic, the TVA purchased some property, 286 acres on Lockertsville Road. For those that are not familiar with Cheatham County, it's literally in the middle of our farms. It's in West Cheatham County. We don't have, we are experiencing some residential development, like it, you know, every community across all 95 counties, but we don't have any industry here. So it's just farms. And they purchased this property during the pandemic, which I personally find questionable, considering everything was supposed to be shut down, and TVA is a federal agency. So how they were conducting business, I don't know, raises some questions. But nonetheless, they purchased the property. It raised some eyebrows because we were all like, why? Why is the TVA buying this land? We couldn't get any answers at that time. Our local ECD director, as well as the TVA, talking heads, they all said, don't worry about a thing. It's going to be solar support for Google or for Facebook, which is now Meta. You know, it's going to be some sort of solar support, and we're years away from any sort of development. Well, years was less than 2 when they announced a 75-acre methane gas plant on that property, 10 acres of battery storage, 35,000 gallons of diesel storage. Now, granted, this is on Sycamore Creek. All right, this is not like it's on some flat cornfield somewhere. This is above the only public water source for the city of Pleasant View. That's where the water intake is, and this plant is going to sit right above that. So any sort of runoff or contamination there's certainly risk for contaminating an entire city's water supply. Um, but we were not notified by the TVA of their plans. It was the Sierra Club that had let us know, hey, you've got a methane gas plant going in your community. And we were all like, what are you talking about? So some deceptive marketing on TVA's part. They did put out some flyers, so they say, although we never saw them, they put some flyers out stating that they are going to consider energy generation on Cheatham County, or on a property owned in Cheatham County. They didn't put the location, they didn't put any details, and they didn't even contact our mayor. They didn't contact our county commissioners. They just decided to do it.
Wow. And there's been a lot of pushback, right? I mean, you are now with Preserve Cheatham County, but there also have been resolutions passed in the areas that are going to be affected. Ashland City and Cheatham County have both passed resolutions opposing this new TVA gas plant. Is this a pretty unanimous vibe in the area,
Yeah.
or are there people who are like, yay, a gas plant?
There might be, one or two people that are more apathetic than anything, but the majority of folks countywide, we've got a community of 40,000 residents from Pleasant View to Kingston Springs, and the Cheatham County Commission passed an opposing resolution. The town of Ashland City, the town of Pleasant View, and the town of Kingston Springs, everyone has passed resolutions saying, hey, TVA, no, this is wrong. It doesn't belong here. It's just incredible that they have the authority that they have to come in. There's no setbacks. There's no zoning. We have zoning in place here in Cheatham County, just like I believe the other 98 counties. We have zoning in place for a very specific reason, and that is to protect the landscape, to protect the property owners, and to make sure that industry doesn't go where they're not supposed to go. Well, TVA doesn't have to abide by that.
Why not?
They're the federal government. They are exempt from all local laws. And the Tennessee legislature made it even easier, right? So the way that TVA is doing this project, they're segmenting it, intentionally segmenting it. So you've got the center project, the 75-acre methane gas plant, plus everything around there. Then they have to have an additional, we don't know how many miles. We get different numbers depending on what day of the week you talk to these folks. But we've got miles of pipeline that need to be added. Then we've got another 40 miles, 35 to 40 miles of new transmission lines that need to be added. And none of those other two projects are not, even though they're dependent upon the approval of this methane gas plant, they're not part of the environmental review of this process. They all have their own segmented reviews. So it's astonishing to me. So the legislature passed a couple of years ago, they had passed what is now Public Chapter 1100. They gave the same authority that TVA has to private pipeline corporations. So the pipeline that's going to be coming into Cheatham County is not going to be owned or operated by the Tennessee Valley Authority. It's going to be owned by a private gas company who has absolutely we have no recourse. So, if anything happens with that pipeline, if there's a leak, if there's contamination, if there's an explosion, TVA can say, not my problem. That's Kinder Morgan or Tennessee Gas Company or whoever it is that's going to get that contract.
Was this the law that was passed after the Byhalia pipeline pushback in Memphis?
It is.
Was it so the Byhalia pipeline pushback happened, Memphis stood up to it, they actually beat back the pipeline and won, and then
Yep.
Kevin Vaughn, Republican. I don't know your politics, by the way, just so people know, like you and I have not talked about this at all, but
Correct.
it was the Republicans that passed a bill that basically said, you can't push back anymore. If we want to put a pipeline through your backyard, like we get to do that no matter what local communities say. Is that the law that you're talking about?
Yep, that's exactly the one. And our state representative and our state senator both voted in the affirmative for that bill as well. So,
Let's name them. Who are they?
Representative Mary Littleton and Senator Kerry Roberts.
Okay. Mary Littleton, most known on our pages for believing that students are going to the bathroom in kitty litter boxes and saying that in committee. So that should give you some idea of where she stands. Talk to me a little bit about what happened recently. There was I think, a listening session where TVA,
Mhm.
you guys, I think you spoke and others spoke. And, just to give you my general sense of what quote unquote listening sessions are intended to be able to get a headline that says, "Hey, we had a listening session." I have never seen a listening session where the state government appeared to actually be listening. So can you tell us what happened there?
That's a very interesting experience, I think. And for those of us that are new to this fight, there's folks that have been fighting the TVA for, years and years, but this is new for us. There was a group of us that went to Chattanooga last year, which was the first listening session following the announcement in Cheatham County. So there was a handful of us that went out to Chattanooga, and it was a very formal and very intimidating atmosphere. They cut your mic off at right at 3 minutes. So you've got to make sure you get all your concerns in real quick
And they don't
because
live stream these things, right? They're not on
they
video.
don't. No, they don't. And they don't. The folks that are attending are not supposed to record. We did though. I mean, we did it anyways. Um, yeah, they're not supposed to record. So, at the Chattanooga meeting, I questioned this board. Now the majority of this board at this point, the board is appointed by the president of the United States. And the majority of the board members now, I believe, are Biden appointees, which makes this all the more frustrating because the Biden administration has set very, very clear decarbonization goals and environmental goals when it comes to greenhouse gases. And this board is the only regulatory authority over the TVA. We don't have a public utility commission like other states do that can say, hey, wait a minute, we need to see your purpose and need, and we need to vote on this. We don't have that in Tennessee. That's the purpose. Excuse me, that's the purpose of this TVA board. So, we really demand that the board take back their authority and do their job. That's why they're there. And supporting it. I don't want to say that they're supporting the gas build out. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but from where we sit, it sure looks that way. In the Chattanooga meeting, they approved a 4.5% rate increase. So everybody across the board is getting higher electricity bills because of this rate increase. So a 4.5% rate increase to pay for the methane build out. So how is it that our voices matter and our voices are being heard and we're going to consider everything that the communities are saying, but we're going to go ahead and raise everybody's rates to pay for it anyways? How does that equate to we're listening?
It's a really good question. And, the TVA of it all is probably a whole different show and, would take a very long time to dig into how we got here with the TVA. For people to have a general understanding that I have is, the TVA started because the Southeast had no electricity, was very poor, and they like brought in this army of engineers to basically create all this energy in the Southeast. And it did create jobs and it did, electrify the area. But as
Mhm.
part of that bargain, the TVA was given basically immunity from all of these laws that you're talking about and has really had a lot of pollution issues. And it's been really hard to kind of bring them into the future
Yeah.
and use uh, renewable energy, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
A big part of this story, I think, from where I'm sitting, is the incentive structure.
Yes.
And, there is a headline here from the New Republic: the Tennessee Valley Authority's incentive structure keeps residents hooked on fossil fuels.
Mhm.
And they talk specifically about the bonus structure of Jeff Lyash, which, by the way, here's Jeff. And for the TVA CEO to have a last name Lyash when coal ash is like a big part of what they do, and they seem to not be telling the truth a whole lot. Anyway, going back to this, most relevantly, his bonus amount is based on the reliability of TVA's energy, but the incentive exists only for the TVA's primary energy sources: nuclear, coal, and gas. There is no bonus for a solar plant performing well. So
Right.
I think it's not a crazy thing to think the way their incentive structures are set up is contributing to the decisions that are being made that could potentially be harming your communities. Has that come up at all?
Oh, it does. Not so much in public conversation, but amongst stakeholders, and I consider stakeholders to be folks like you and me. Even though, let's kind of talk a little bit about who the TVA is real quick and why they were created. So in 1933, they were created to help the farmers to control flooding. That was their mission, and to help farmers learn how to grow crops better. They created fertilizer. They were, active in the war, creating munitions. So the electricity generation was secondary to their purpose. And, by creating the waterways, navigable waterways, that brought in more industry. Again, back in 1933. This is 2024. So, what worked in 1933 is not necessarily relevant in 2024. So, Mr. Lyash, yes, his salary is pretty insane.
He made something like, just so people know, he made something like 10 or $12 million. I think he's the highest paid federal employee.
He is 10.5 million was what he brought home last year, and it is heavily, incentivized by methane gas. And the
I
reason
think something like 90% is in bonuses. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think his base salary is like 1.5,
Right.
1.5, which is still a lot of money. This is
Sure
a
is.
public utility,
Right.
and I think that gets lost on folks, right? And the board has kind of justified this in a way that says, well, we need to be competitive with the private sector. No, you don't. This is the public sector. It's service. So, I mean, the CEO of TVA makes 4 or 5 times more than the US Postmaster General. So, I mean, if we want to talk about apples and apples, that's about as close as we're going to get to, a salary structure that may be comparable. I mean, it's a different industry, obviously, but it's the Postmaster General. He makes less than 400 grand a year, which is a lot of money, but still, it's not 1.5, it's not 10.5. So it's a lot of money. Let's see, I kind of lost track of where I was going.
So
Sorry about
I
that,
guess
Justin.
here's my next question. One of the main ways I think that a lot of this came into people's consciousness was the Kingston coal ash spill, which
Mhm,
happened a while back. And there was the Kingston coal ash spill, which really hurt a lot of people's homes. But then there was the cleanup that
mhm.
hurt the workers. And
Yeah.
that was a big deal also. And it took years and years to drag on. And because TVA was sort of immune, they had to sue the cleanup company that was brought in to clean them up. So it
Mhm.
seems like TVA understands how to keep themselves protected and not give people recourse to come after them. What recourse will locals in Cheatham County have if anything goes wrong to hold TVA accountable?
It goes back to segmenting the project. I mean, if there's a problem with the pipelines, we would have to go after, the gas pipeline company.
Right.
Um, it's really frustrating. It's just really frustrating. And yeah, TVA is well insulated. They are absolutely well insulated. And it literally is going to take an act of Congress to change anything. And thank goodness, for Senator Cohen, I mean, I'm sorry, Representative Cohen out of, Memphis, and Representative Tim Burchett out of Knoxville. Thank goodness for them, because they have introduced a new piece of legislation in Congress. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't know the status of it. I know it's been introduced, but I don't know where it is right now in the process. And they are calling for more transparency from the TVA as well as the TVA board. I personally would like to see that legislation go further, but I know how hard it is to get things done in Congress these days. But it's really unfortunate that the congressional representatives where TVA is impacting their constituents the most are silent. So, we have begged for assistance from Marsha Blackburn and Senator Haggerty and Mark Green. We have begged them to help us. Crickets. I don't sit on that committee. There's nothing I can do about it. Well, it's TVA, dadgummit. You can do something about it, and we vote for you.
You just used Burchett's favorite word, dadgummit.
Oh,
The two that you mentioned, Burchett says that a lot. The two that you mentioned, though, it should be noted, Cohen is a Democrat, Burchett is a Republican. If this is something that they agree on, that's very notable. And
yeah,
I guess I should ask, this seems like the kind of issue, at least locally, that crosses party lines. This doesn't seem like it should be a partisan issue. Have you found
yeah.
that?
Absolutely. And of course, that's the great thing about Preserve Cheatham County, right? We cast a very wide net. We generally environmental issues are seen from a political persuasion to be more left of center. That's not what this is about. This is an assault on private property. This is a government taking. This is, I mean, there's so much wrong with this that it has little to do with party politics. Of course, there's going to be some, but we have in our group, we've got, very conservative citizens. We've got libertarians. We've got, liberals. We've got moderates. It's all of us, and we love each other. We might not agree philosophically and politically, but we're neighbors and we're in this together.
Okay, so speaking of neighbors being in this together, I would imagine most of the people watching this right now are not living in Cheatham County, but might want to support the fight that Cheatham County is going to put up here against the TVA, against this, again, gas plant coming in basically unannounced without approval. Where does this stand right now, and how can people be helpful?
You can definitely go to our website, preservecheathamcounty.org. We have a lot of information on there. We've all worked so hard to try to get as much information into the public hands as possible. If you're willing to buy us a cup of coffee and flip us $5 or $10, we'd certainly be happy for that too. It is a citizens group. We are volunteer. And it's just, we're TVA 24/7 all the time right now. So where we are in the process right now, they are currently trying to gain access for surveys for the transmission lines, which again is a segmented part of this project. So they've not yet approved the methane gas plant, but they're still going forward with trying to gain access to people's property without quantifying that need. So there's a lot of questions here, and thankfully we were able to find an expert attorney in this area. She does a lot of work up in Washington, and she was able to present. She was able to host a legal webinar for us last night, and she gave us a lot of really fantastic information. And one of those things was, don't make their job easier. You don't have to let them on their property, make them go to court. So it's like, okay, let's do that. So anything that we can do to try to delay this, I think is going to be important, but we've got to stop it. We just have to stop it. So, and we have to continue to contact the board of directors, and we need Congress to step in here. We need our congressional representatives to do their job, represent your constituents.
Powerful. Tracy, thanks for coming on here. Keep us posted. Feel free to send us any links we need to lift up for you guys. And We definitely want people to know that this is at least happening so
Thank
they can
you.
be aware because, it's like anything else. If it happens to them, it's going to happen to your community next. So
Absolutely.
definitely get involved. PreserveCheathamCounty.org. And it's Tracy O'Neill. Thanks, Tracy, for coming on here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care. That was Tracy O'Neill, Preserve Cheatham County. For those who joined us a little bit late, I'll just kind of give you the quick rundown. Basically, there is a gas plant coming to Cheatham County, Ashland City area from the TVA, where they didn't really tell them it was coming. They just kind of sprung it on them. And it's part of this whole initiative that TVA is putting more gas plants in Tennessee, moving away from coal, but not moving to renewables. And a big part of that, according to, some people, and it seems reasonable, is the incentive structure of executives at TVA like Jeff Lyash, who I think Biden nominees on the board just changed his incentive structure, changed his salary, but still, it's very much bonus structure geared towards nuclear, coal, and gas, not to renewables. And for President Biden to be running on, and touting a clean energy platform and priority structure, for him to, oversee as the federal government, the TVA, as they put more gas plants in our communities, it seems hypocritical. And now Cheatham County is bearing the brunt of this. So they are standing up and fighting. This is a statement from the director of the Southern Environmental Law Center, saying the resolutions passed by Cheatham County Commission and Ashland City make it clear these communities don't want a dirty and disruptive fossil fuel plant in their backyards. It would pollute the air, put important waterways like Sycamore Creek at risk, and handcuff families across Tennessee Valley to paying expensive fossil fuel prices for decades. Listen to the communities, scrap the plans. And again, as we mentioned, you know, I don't know how much some of you know about the TVA. I don't know a ton about the TVA, but I have a general sense of what happened with it, which is, you know, it probably had a noble initial goal of electrifying and, helping the Southeast back in like the Depression days when it first started. And it was like a federal jobs program, basically. And it did a lot of, you know, it helped these communities move into the future in a lot of ways. So, we don't want to lose sight of that and at least talk about that. But because it was a federal program, because it was given all of this immunity to do what it did, which is something that we do often as a government, we like say, okay, we want you to do this. And they say, oh, well, we can't because it's too much liability. And we say, okay, no liability. And then that echoes for decades and hurts a lot of people, because when you have people who don't have to worry about safety, who don't have to worry about pollution, and they are doing all of these huge projects like, coal plants, gas plants, pipelines, you know, it's all about incentives. And so if the incentive is not to be careful, if the incentive is to make money, 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 it's pretty obvious what's going to happen. And so now what Tracy's saying is, well, the only recourse we have is for the government, who has jurisdiction over TVA, to do something about this. And it sounds like Rep Cohen and Rep Burchett, who I'm no fan of, Rep Burchett, but, sounds like maybe his heart might be in the right place on this one. They're trying to bring more transparency to TVA, trying to encourage the federal government to do something about this. And so far, nothing has happened. Obviously, it's not easy to get the federal government to do anything about anything, but certainly once, a Republican takes federal office in the White House, that's not going to happen. Right now might be the only chance, with President Biden still in the Oval Office. Who knows if he'll be there next year, to do something to help the people of Cheatham County. So it's a long way of saying, call your reps, call your Congress people, call your senators, even though Marsha Blackburn will never talk to me, but she might talk to you, and let them know that this is not a partisan issue, that there are resolutions being passed in these local communities by Democrats and Republicans alike. that farmers are being impacted, that communities are being impacted, and it's time for some oversight to help preserve Cheatham County and the folks in these communities push back against an out of control TVA. Thanks for following, and we'll see you next time.